Arrays are basically a way to store and manipulate groups of related elements. It's a very useful and common feature in programming languages, and Swift is no exception. So here we have an array already created, and we're telling the compiler that this is an array of strings, which means every element in the array has to be a string. The Swift compiler is smart enough to figure this out on its own, so we don't actually need to tell it this. So most of the time you'll just see an array written like this, and if we Alt or Option click on characters, you can see that we still know that the array is a type string. Accessing elements of arrays is pretty simple using bracket notation. So I can take characters at index 0 to get the first element. Or I can do characters at 6 to get the last element. I can also use the first and last properties, which is a little bit safer because they return optionals. So if this array didn't actually have any names in it, let's get rid of that for now. Tell it it's an array of strings, so it's empty. These now both return nil because there's nothing here. If you were to try to use an index that was out of range, we saw before, you'd get an error and a crash. There's a few ways to add elements to arrays. The simplest would be using the append method. We give it the name we want to add. And this adds the element to the end of the array. So if we now look at the characters array, you can see, well, look at it after we added the element. You can see that the element's been added at the end. We can also use the insert method, which gives us flexibility to put it where we want. So if you don't want it at the end, let's say we want it to insert at the beginning instead, we can say at index 0. And now you can see our new characters at the front. To remove from an array, we have the characters.removeAt method. And you can see here that it takes an int, and what it's looking for is the index of the element to remove. So for example, if we wanted to remove the second element from this array, we can give index 1. And now you can see, well, let's look at what is in the characters array after that operation, and you can see index 1 has been removed. Most of the time, however, we are not going to know the index at the time we're calling this method. You can imagine a case where things are being added to the array and we're not exactly sure what is in it. So most of the time, we'll need to find the index using characters.first index of. And here we can provide the name that we're looking for, and it'll return this index. So this actually, if we were to say let index equal, we can inspect this index, and what we're actually getting is an optional index. And that's because we're not actually sure if this name is in the array or not. In this case it is, but we don't know that. So if this were not part of the array, we'd get nil here. So what we can do is unwrap this with an if let, and then use our removeAt inside of the if let block and provide the index. Delete this, examine what's in characters down here, and we should get the same result, but it's a little more robust. A couple other ways of removing from an array. We do have the remove all method, which does what it sounds like it's going to do. Removes every element from the array, and you can see we have an empty array. There's also the remove all where method. And this one takes a closure that will be applied to each element in the array, and we can give it an expression that we want to remove by. For example, if we wanted every character that contains a K in the name to be removed, we can say $0, which just refers to the element in the closure, dot contains, and then the letter K. And this will apply this to each name and should remove Riku and Waka from the array. And if we examine the array again, we can see it does just that. One common task with arrays is to loop through and perform some operation for each element. We can do that with a for loop for character in characters. And then if we want to print something in the loop, we can say character, which refers to, this will change depending on which element we're looping through. Character is sexy. And then we can see the output down here. Nothing but sexy characters. There's a few other methods of arrays that involve taking one array, applying some kind of operation to each element in it, and then returning a second array. The first one of those is sorted. And the simplest way to use sorted is to just do characters dot sorted with no argument. And that'll apply the default sort. And you could see in the result panel over here that for strings, we just get them sorted in alphabetical order. If you wanted to apply an argument to sorted, we can do that with brackets. And let's say we wanted to sort the array by the number of characters each name has in it, with the lower character counts appearing first. We could do that with the first element. So $0 will refer to the first element, and then $1 will refer to the next element that we're going to compare against. So if we do $0 dot count is less than $1 dot count, that will sort the array with the names. You can see the names that have 4 characters are in the beginning, then 5, and so on. The next method that is used a lot is called map. And it's used the same way that sorted is, but it works a little differently. So map will take an expression and apply it to each element in the array, and then return a new array with the transformed elements. So for this one, let's say we wanted to have an array with the counts of the number of letters of each name. So integers only, basically. If the name has 5 characters in it, we would just want the number 5 in that place. We could do that really easily with $0 dot count. So this will take each element and replace it with the number of characters. And you can see here that we get the number of characters for each name. Then the last one we'll go over is called filter. Also similar structure to the other two. This is basically a way to filter an array to only elements that satisfy a given condition. So for this one, we'll take only the names that have 5 or more characters in them and put those in a new array. So we can do that by saying $0 dot count is greater than or equal to 5. That'll be applied in turn to each element. And then you can see the result here. The names that have only 4 characters are not in the result array. So that was some of the basics of working with arrays in Swift. This is the first video I've recorded, so I realize it kind of sucks, and hopefully we'll only get better from here. Peace.